Good evening. My name is Odie Hawkins, and it's my pleasure to greet you again on Monday evening. Today is Monday. Yesterday was Sunday, and so that's why I know today is Monday. I'm dealing with a private joke that has something to do with my wife and I talking about how it is that sometimes I've been able to skip days and choose the day that I want it to be. Well, I know that today is Monday, and let's let it go at that. All joking aside, last time I read a short story, and we made the announcement that for the course of this year, 2023, I would be reading short forms of different things I've written, short stories, maybe one-act plays even, and mentioning play. That brings us to this year. Yesterday, we were invited to see the Robey Theatre Company do a piece called A Heated Discussion. The play is written by a man named Levy Lee Simon, or you may say Simon. And it is a marvelous piece of work. I think I might sit here for this moment in time and do a little PR for somebody else's work, but I certainly think it's worth it. We would like to give hugs and embraces to Rosie Lee Hooks for making it possible. She is in the play and left 2 tickets for us, and we went and took full advantage of it. The performance started about 3:15 and ended about 6:15, but with a short intermission. But it went like wildfire. Mm-hmm. The play, I wouldn't call it a play, let's call it a heated discussion. Why am I talking about this? Well, okay, I had the opportunity when I lived in Ghana for 3 years to write and direct some television shows. The television show was a detective story called Inspector Bediako. I had not ever previously directed, well, the high school plays, but I had not directed in a professional way, you know, a production. So I have some idea what it takes to do things like assemble 14 or 15 actors and actresses and have them follow a script and do all the things you have to do to make a successful production happen. We saw evidence of it yesterday at a superb level. Mr. Guillory, my goodness, this guy has been at the top of his game for so long. Ben Guillory. The company has been in effect since 1994, so they've had some experience doing with a number of things. I was so impressed by it that I thought I would write a little review under the pen name of Heather. That's what I call myself when I do reviews, so that no one would suspect that it's really me, Odie Hawkins.
Well, I think Odie Hawkins should be given credit because he's the one who saw it. I think Odie Hawkins should be.
I heard a voice.
I think Odie Hawkins should be get the credit because he and I saw this marvelous play.
Isn't that the word to use? Okay. Marvelous. Right?
Yes, indeed. It's awe-inspiring. Such talent.
We talked about it for hours after we
talked about it on the way to the parking lot. We talked about it in the car. We talked about it when you got home. We got home.
It's the kind of experience. Mm-hmm. But let me read you what I've written, and then we could talk about it just a little bit more because it's worth it. Yesterday night, the play was entitled A Heated Discussion, and you'll see shortly why it's called a heated discussion. Yesterday night, as my friends in D.O. Ghana used to say, me and Zola Salena decided to break a COVID-imposed taboo. We would make a long-delayed trip to see a play. We weren't certain that it would be a play because the adverts called it a heated discussion, in parentheses, revisited. Something written by Levy Lee Simon and directed by the legendary theater visionary Guillory. A heated discussion, revisited. Should we spend a couple hours checking out the Robey Theatre Company is doing its thing? Well, how could we resist the opportunity? How many times in our theater-going lives would we have a chance to see Tupak Shakur, played by Lawrence Arnell, Angelou, Kimberly Bailey, Richard Pryor, Philip Bell, Dmetrius Conley Williams was his understudy, Lorraine Hansberry, Christina Childress, Bob Marley, Alex W.S.T, I don't know what that means, Malcolm X, Marcus Clark Oliver, Odie Wells, Monte Escalante, James Baldwin, Julio Hanson, and I'm telling you, he really did a marvelous job. Did a marvelous job. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Rosie Lee Hooks. Shout outs and applause for Rosie Lee Hooks. Nina Simone, Lashada John Jackson, Oya, Ayana Michelle, Oshun, Charis Monet, Dr. Martin Luther King, Damon Rutledge, Yemaya, Angelou Smith, Zora Neale Hurston, Swiss Sinner, and Shango Bengali exchanging stuff with each other. Our trip was enhanced by the director of the Watchtower's Art Center, Rosie Lee Hooks, Dr. Frances Welsing, that was her character. There would be 2 tickets for you at the box office. We gave each other full-fledged hugs for our good fortune. A speedy, uneventful Sunday afternoon trip downtown, parking in the familiar space across the street from the DOJ, a place where I used to take to and take away. My wife, for 10 or more years, she spent there trying to work with the legal system. We strolled to the Los Angeles Theater Center without excessive expectations. The last theater event we had experienced at this theater years ago was to suffer through 2 dreadful acts of a really awful play. That was not happening this time around. It took a moment to realize that the Orisha governed world of the other life was offering us a mythology seldom seen on the American stage. In parentheses, as casual followers of the religion and longtime students of our unique culture, we were immediately grabbed by the black people being given free rein to talk freely. It was the homework of 16 beautifully honed artists to morph us into different time zones, racial attitudes, stuff that had happened to us then that was still impacting us now. Forget about slavery, it's over and done. They did a gorgeous job of showing us what had happened in America, what has been happening in America. There were videos, events right up there, but more spectacularly, there were these 16 actors on this minimalist stage, a couple of tables with some green grapes, real, because we saw them eat some, and some bright-colored wine-looking glasses. We didn't cop to the idea that they were righteously drinking, or else everybody sipping would have been toasted out. I think I must have saw Richard Pryor pour himself 4 or 5 glasses.
Most definitely.
He was pouring, I think it was probably water they had.
It looked like more like water, yeah.
And lo and behold, they did have a heated discussion. Never seen nothing like it in all our born days. Niggers, Negroes, blacks, African Americans, Clarence Thomas, Larry Elder types being spoken to and about on stage. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, our ticket to the scene, took her to another level when she was able to forcefully speak on a set of psychosexual arguments that had nothing to do with her. She was simply being a superb actor. You know, that's one of the really fine things about a good actor. They can take a piece of material about an unpopular person
Mm-hmm.
And Harvey wanted to hear more about it because of the kind of energy they put into it and the kind of art they show.
Like Mr. Davis in Fences.
Yeah.
Okay, like crying and
She
Fences,
cried.
and yeah, okay, right, and Rosie cried.
She shed a tear.
Right, yes, indeed, and took us there.
We have to ask her about that. How did that go?
Mm-hmm.
Pardon the interruption, moment in time.
Yes.
She was simply being a superb actor. And that seems to be when they hit their groove. It was kind of edgy for a moment. Mm-hmm. The heated discussion had currents, cross currents, and undercurrents, but they were never murky or bogged down by superficially intellectual constraints. Mm-hmm. This was African Americans talking to each other forcefully and clearly. What they had to say to each other and to us was pertinent and powerful. The question kept surfacing. What the hell are we going to do with these white folks? The ones who've always tried to destroy our lives. The question was answered by the mysterious appearance of Shango himself. Oya, his wife, asked, "Shango, where did you come from?" He didn't answer that question. Mm-hmm. But he did answer the question of what we should do about being murdered in one way or another all the time. Mm-hmm. Create armed black militia who dispense justice if we don't receive it from the system. The idea of a black militia taking care of business caused the large brother next to me, on my left, to turn to me with a strange expression on his face. Did you hear what I heard? I nodded. Yeah, I heard what you heard. I heard what Shango just said. Shango, bombastic as only he can be, said a few other things before he left the scene, but that black militia statement seemed to stick to the walls.
Whew. Well said, Madison. Well said.
There's more that could be said because there was the...
Well, it's interesting that from so many of the characters that have gone on, the costumes were well chosen, okay, that they look like they were in clothes of that time.
Yeah.
Wait
I got to dispute you that. They were not necessarily in that time. They just simply had on the clothes that they would not normally wear.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Okay.
Ida B. Wells was the only one that had a little corset on.
Oh, okay, right. But she was supposed to be, in fact, from slave times. Right, okay. Yeah. And so, and the outfit looked like she stepped right back from the slave times. Now, what fascinated me, too, was stage cigarettes.
Oh, what was that?
Okay, and it's so that they smoked, but they didn't burn. So it appeared that they were smoking cigarettes, but they stayed the same length, I think.
It's some kind of vapor kind of cigarette.
I don't know what kind it was, but it was not a
little
cigarette.
smoke came out.
Right, yeah, it was a little cigarette type thing. So that gave the authenticity to...
Because we all knew that James Baldwin smoked like a chimney.
Right, okay. And what I like, too, is that while they favored featurely some of the characters, most of the characters, they had the essence of the characters.
You put your finger right on something. It shows you how it is that somebody can milk the essence, as you say, milk the essence out of something without being physically similar. The guy who played Richard Pryor, for example, was much shorter than Richard Pryor would ever be.
Okay. Right, okay.
But he had certain mannerisms, that was sort of...
Well, yeah, and like Tupak.
Okay, with Tupak, the young brother who played him, he was definitely into it. He used beautiful profanity.
Yes, he did.
It was appropriate, and the way he used it was very natural. It wasn't as though he said MF or FU or whatever it was he had to say, and made it sound like he was ill at ease with it.
Right.
I mean, I remember at a casting where I had a script at the University, I believe it was, and they had people come in, and at one part in the script it had the word motherfucker.
Right.
And I remember several of the actors okay, I have to rule white boys out. They just couldn't say it, period. Motherfucker, you know.
Right.
And then the brother came in, and you know, we just took it for granted. He did the same thing. Motherfucker.
Not quite.
You know, he choked on it. So it takes a kind of creative, unique understanding of some kind of, I think, cultural values in order to push it out. The thing that made it so good for us is that it never was a lull. They went from peak to peak.
Yes.
There was never a lull, a valley where things just sank. With 14 people on stage, something was always happening.
Well, you know, and then, like I said, with James Baldwin, you know, with his touching of the woman, I was like, that's odd, considering his
He was a touchy-feely
type.
type.
Touchy-feely person, and people of his persuasion also love women.
Well,
Yeah, so, you know.
Would you want to love a woman if you were...
Yes, there you go. All right.
Shit.
And, you know, and the jokes of the comedian, Richard Pryor, were appropriate. All right. And the response or the reaction to his jokes were appropriate. And it was so funny to me that Zora Neale Hurston, she had a conflict with another woman.
With I believe it was Lorraine Hansberry.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they were at each other.
Okay, they were at each other in life. So in afterlife, they hadn't forgotten.
Yeah.
Which, you know.
I thought that was the genius bit of staging by having the scene happen in afterlife, but afterlife as governed by ancient African deities.
Yes.
Oya, Yemaya, Oshun, and of course Shango. The argument that the Christian preacher was trying to make, in this case Martin Luther King, sort of fell flat when he was quoting the good book, and these people were giving pre-biblical advice. A lot of people who have been converted, whether it's to Islam or to Buddhism or to Christianity, whatever, they forget that the religion predated all of their so-called religion. Somebody asked a good friend of mine who was a priest one day at the Iolosha Tanina Shangobuni's house, why do you call it a religion? The brother didn't skip a beat. He says, well, look at it this way. It's been proven by most anthropologists, the people in Liki in East Africa discovered that the origin of the human species, as we know it from having descended from the apes and so forth, the origin of the human species took place in East Africa, in the Old Deval Gorge specifically. The bones to prove it and so forth. Nothing has been invented or found that indicates that anything was prior to that. These beings, we can assume that they were somewhat like we are as modern people, undoubtedly came to the conclusion that they were not alone in the universe and that there were higher powers. And the first thing that they did as a way of worship was to begin to worship nature. Thunder, lightning. I mean, if you have a limited meteorological background, that could be, you know, frightening. And how do you explain it? Well, you explain it by saying there's a greater force out there. There's a greater power. I mean, we've been places late at night where you look up at the sky and look like the stars are just enveloping you. So the explanation that the brother continued was that it was a short hop and a step away from having these experiences with nature to having the ability to name these experiences. And we can come down to present day terms like goddess of the ocean, Yemaya, goddess of the river Oshun, also of love. The warrior god Shango, who hates liars and thieves, who punishes liars and thieves. And you go on to the pantheon of something like 700 minor league deities that a lot of people don't know anything about. Some people know a little bit about. We know a little bit about them. But he explained it in that way and said, okay, you know, if you have some beings who decided that they should offer some kind of form of worship to these forces of nature, and then thousands of years later, somebody comes up, well, Jesus Christ, or Buddha, or Naaman.
Right.
So they really become latter-day human-driven religions. I mean, like Scientology, they don't offer any kind of biblical explanation other than Ron Hubbard thought of all of this stuff out of his brain, and there you are. So to have a play with some ethereal creature of this stature back it up.
With very different personalities there.
Oh, the three women who played.
Yes.
Who was it? Oya, Yemaya, and Oshun.
Oshun, yes. And it tickled me with Oya. She was angry throughout the play till Shango showed up.
Her husband?
Yes, and then she, as with most women who are in a challenging situation, can be angry, but when their love shows up, hey, okay, yeah.
When their love comes out.
Yeah, it's all good.
Well, it was entirely appropriate because in the mythology of Oya and Shango, Oya is the wife who prepares the way for him.
Yes, of course she does.
And when she does, carrying around that little sword she had, suddenly, boom, he's on the scene with his, boom, man, that cutlass, what was the thing he had, a big hatchet?
Yeah, I forgot the
scary.
Yeah,
when he
right.
held it up over his head, I thought, oh my goodness, don't lose the grip. We're right in front of you. You know, you split somebody's head open and shed blood. Wouldn't that be a performance?
For Shango, right?
Yeah. There were funny parts in it, as you recall. But I think the most impactful thing for my head is the fact that there was so much. The word that would best describe would be gorgeous.
Yes.
It was just gorge, full of information and intelligent observations. And,
right. You know, I think we would have stayed for the question and answering, but coming back in the evening from leaving Los Angeles, going anywhere in the evening,
especially coming from
is a challenge. Yeah. So that was not good.
No, I didn't want to stay and hear a lot of pontification,
right?
Which is that automatically happens. This is the person.
The stage was too real.
Yeah.
The stage was too real.
Okay, when we say stage, we're talking about
the performance itself.
The performance right in front of you.
Yes,
we had
just
front row seats.
Just perfect.
I mean, perfect. So, at one point, I felt like if they come any closer, I'm gonna sit right in the stage and then see what this feels like.
I'm going to come just. I'm going to come just to say a big thank you to Rosie and to the group. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was awesome.
Thank you. And there you have it. Complete agreement.
Complete agreement.
See you tomorrow night. See you tomorrow night with the real story, not one that's been made up.
Itness.
Stay.
Your website, www.odiehawkins.com. And again, as you said, we'll see you tomorrow night.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. Namaste.
Maya.